GPs is something that is really important, because at the moment it's more sort of the specialist clinicians who know about these disorders and who are able to shed light on these disorders, as opposed to sort of in primary care.
Good, thank you. Well, as we've got to 12 o'clock, I will now move on to our next speaker. In fact, our next speakers. So we are going to now hear from Dr. Alana Terry and Holly Wright on the topic of molecular imaging of synaptic loss in PSP. Alana is a clinical research fellow in the neurodegenerative imaging group at the University of Exeter. And Holly is a fellow of the Chartered Management Institute, clearly helping with the organization and delivery of the research studies. So I will hand over to both of you now.
Brilliant, thank you so much. So I've got some slides that I'll share with you today. So yeah, thanks first of all for letting us be here to speak with you guys. I'm really grateful to have the chance to have a chat and listen to all the other great talks as well. Unfortunately, it will just be me today. Holly's not available at the moment due to some last minute things, but I've got some slides I'll run through with you about one of our research studies that we have at the moment. So I'll just share my slides here. So can everybody see that okay now?
Yes, they've come up. Thanks, Alana.
Brilliant, great. Yeah, so I'm here to talk about one of our ongoing research studies that we have at the moment in conjunction with the University of Exeter. It's really exciting, quite cutting edge research, and I'll just explain a little bit in more detail about what we're actually doing and what we're looking at as well. So our study is focusing on PSP, and particularly within the realms of neuroimaging, and looking at how scans can help us, and following on really nicely from Riona's talk about understanding the diagnosis and aiding in diagnosis, and also differentiation between other conditions like MSA. So this study involves both PSP but an MSA cohort as well, so we can kind of look at changes between them and help us get some more information about differentiating between them. So I'm one of the clinical doctors that works on this study, and Holly is involved in sort of the logistics arrangements and participant involvement as well. So just to run through a little bit of background then, so we know that PSP is a disorder that affects primarily older adults, and it can lead to declines in movement, thinking and behavior. And what we know from previous research and previous studies, that one of the main sort of causes or things that happens in PSP and pathological features of PSP is due to a buildup of a protein called tau protein. And this protein builds up in the brain and forms clumps within different areas in the brain, and that can disrupt the function that those different areas are responsible for. And often that's kind of movement, coordination, and that's something that's responsible for what the symptoms, how people present physically. So our research is an exciting study that sort of is underway to investigate and understand PSP better, particularly from that kind of molecular starting level, what's actually going on in the brain, in real time as people progress with the disease. So our study aims to investigate how actually this tau spreads in the brain and why it affects different people in different ways, and why it can cause different symptoms in different people. And our techniques sort of aim to detect these tau proteins early, and we use a combination of brain scans and also blood tests as well to look at that, so we can have an idea of what's going on in the brain, but also more peripherally in the body as well. And then, sort of as Riona was saying, and one of the main sort of reasons behind the scan is this hopefully can help us in the future lead to earlier diagnosis, more accurate diagnosis, and help doctors, clinicians, and specialists distinguish between PSP and then other conditions that are sometimes hard to differentiate because there can be some overlapping symptoms. So a little bit more information about the imaging itself. So we use sort of state-of-the-art scanners in a specialist centre in London, which is called In Vitro. I think this centre is one of the only ones in the UK that has these facilities, so we're really lucky to be able to use that. And we mainly use what we call PET scans. So these involve an injection of what we call a radio tracer. So that's a substance that goes around the body It's just put in through sort of the venous supply, and it goes around the body, and it is picked up by the scanner, and it enables us to see images of the brain, and in particular what we're looking for here, where tau protein is in the brain, and the specific areas that the tau protein may be accumulating. We also use MRI scanners, which helps us to give a more general idea of the actual structure of the brain as well, and then we can use these two pictures together. We'll look at baseline, and then we look at follow-up in 12 months' time to kind of compare and contrast, see a picture of what's going on, help us to understand, a bit better on the actual real-time structural and functional level what's happening here. So this is a little bit of an overview of the study. So our study is looking to recruit 16 people with PSP. We're currently at 9, so we're just over halfway, but we still have a bit of a way to go. And then it's split into baseline and follow-up. So baseline will be, as you can see here, visit 1 and visit 2. So visit 1 will be you'll come to London, and it's all arranged and all facilitated by Holly and the team. They're amazing. They try and fit it around your schedule as much as possible, accommodating travel as much as possible. We can literally offer, a door-to-door service. We recruit from all over the UK, and we facilitate travel, accommodation, any companion or care needs that you may need as well. And it's all funded sort of through the study. So we would arrange that and can accommodate it as best, because I appreciate sort of coming down to London can be quite a big thing. So you just want to make it sort of as enjoyable and as easy as possible as we can for participants. And in that as well, sort of visit 1 and 2 can be grouped together in one trip to London, and 3 and 4 can be again in one trip to London, so you're not having to come back and forth. So yeah, as I say, visit 1 will be done by either myself or some of my colleagues up in London, where we'll just have half a day visit where we run through some questionnaires, we'll do blood tests, just kind of a general MOT to assess suitability for the study, safety blood tests, and then clinical questionnaires that help us to understand your symptoms a bit better as well. And then visit 2 will be often the day after, and this is when we'll have the scan day at In Vitro. And these 2 centres are right next to each other, so the screening and where you have the scan literally next door to each other. So visit 2, as I say, we'll have the MRI scan, which lets us see the structure of the brain, and then we'll move on to the PET scan that helps us to visualise the tau protein. And then there's a 12-month gap. So we just sort of stay in contact with you over those 12 months, and then we'd organise your trip to come back 12 months later, just to repeat the exact same visits again. So it'd be same as what we've done on the visit 1 as the visit 3, and same as what we've done on the visit 2 as sort of the technically visit 4, but it's just a repetition. So we can really get a good idea of, how you compare and contrast at that baseline and then 12 months later, which gives us a really nice picture of, how things progress, how this correlates with symptoms, personal progression, and things like that. And so a little bit of information about why to take part. So as I mentioned a little bit before, these are really kind of state-of-the-art, amazing imaging technologies that can help us to see some really, really interesting data of how actually the brain is changing in real time, and how these proteins change, and if there is differences between the patterns of these changes among people and at different time points as well, which help us to understand, the background of the disease, the pathology of the disease, which in turn provide a really great foundation for future research, whether this be into medication to develop new medications that can be used in slowing or hopefully even, stopping the progression of the disease, as well as new drug discovery and further clinical trials, just helping to understand, but also to raise awareness of PSP and other conditions like MSA as well. So a little bit about general questions. So as I said, travel is all arranged by ourselves, and Holly and her team are brilliant. We would reimburse all expenses incurred from food, accommodation to travel, and we can support you, or we have sort of a out of hours on call service to support you at any time with all your travel needs. We accommodate people from all over the UK and not just England, but Scotland. We've had some participants from Wales and Scotland as well. And participants do receive a thank you payment for taking part in the study. And then in terms of results, we hope that our results will be published in sort of a scientific peer-reviewed journal. We generally can't give out any sort of personalized information, unless it was to sort of, if anything, incidental or something we wouldn't expecting on a blood test or a brain scan, that would sort of be important to let your GP or care provider know. We would obviously let yourself and that care provider know about that. But in terms of what we're looking for at the study, we'd just more produce kind of a general report that's sort of anonymized, but can still give an indication of what we found generally. And all data is protected in line with kind of data protection guidelines and kept strictly confidential between the study team. So if you are interested in taking part, we'd love to hear from you. So this is our general email address and Holly's number there as well. So I'll leave that one up if anybody wants to jot that down. But yeah, as I say, we're still recruiting and we are, really, really excited for this research. We hope it gets some really good results and just forward that understanding and awareness of a PSP and conditions like that as well. So does anybody have any questions for me?
Right, so I do, a question from Siobhan, will your research look at distinguishing between the different types of PSP?
Yes, so the PSP types that we include, we do have a range, and we do sort of offer that to all different types, from PSP-RS and all the different ones. So we don't look sort of specifically at distinguishing the different types, but obviously when we're doing the data analysis, we do take into account the type of PSP, if people know that. And obviously if we start to see patterns, that is something that could be very much useful, informative to us, that we can pick up on and then sort of maybe extend that to future studies, or as in the discussion of the research as well. So it's definitely something we bear in mind there.
There's a question from Mervyn, which I think could relate to your study in the future as you start to build data. And it was, are you planning to use AI to assist in the research over time? Will you be analyzing the database that you build in new and smart ways?
Yeah, a really good question. I mean, I think it's definitely on everybody's radar at the minute. We're still kind of using manual techniques, and we've got a team, and I myself have started to have a look at some of the images that we've got so far. But as I say, I'm a clinician by background, so it's all a bit above my head, that kind of thing. So we have a specialist team who are much more kind of involved with the analysis and data analysis. But I think, the AI technologies that are coming up are amazing and can be a really, really useful tool. I don't think they'll sort of be used in place of the team, obviously, at this point, but definitely something that's on our radar. Anything that can help, boost the productivity or the quality of the results we get, potentially something that could be a really useful tool for us in the future, alongside, human work and human analysis as well.
Thank you. So you've still got 3 places left to fill on the study from what you've said. Julie's asked, are there any particular requirements for study participants?
Yeah, so another really good question. So the study does have some inclusion and exclusion criteria. So we're looking for people aged 40 to 85. So age is kind of the main one. And then in terms of other criteria, things like being able to go in scanners, so not having, or at least running past us, if you've got any metal work, any foreign bodies, things like pacemakers or any brain implants, hearing implants, dental work as well. Sometimes we just need to run that past the team, whether it be safe and compatible with the scans and the technologies that we use. And then I suppose ability and availability to come to London and do those 2 days. I appreciate it can be quite an intensive visit, and as I say, we do try and accommodate that to make it as smooth and as comfortable as possible. But being able and happy to travel and stay overnight and do the procedures that are involved. And then if there's any sort of other medical conditions as well, if people did have questions, because it is a little bit on a person-to-person basis about the certain conditions they have, but things that would just sort of be safe and compatible with the procedures that we do. So the main thing is MRI and scan safe. yeah, a willingness and availability to come down to London. But yeah, if anyone has any more sort of personal questions, I can be more than happy to run through individual circumstances if you drop me an email there as well for inclusion.
Great, thank you. And one other question from Mervyn, is the data from research program shared both nationally and internationally?
So in terms of sort of the reports we produce, we'd hope that they'd be eventually sort of put into publications that can be accessed online, that can be sort of from wherever, and presenting at different both international and national conferences, so things like that. So that can be a really sort of good way of spreading the information and making connections. So definitely there's a chance that the findings that we do, we've got a slot at one of the conferences in Helsinki that we're talking about some of our other studies. So that'll be really interesting to sort of get insights from different researchers in different locations. But